Greetings doers and welcome to another video. So this is going to be a new season of deck report. I'm going to be doing deck reports based on like Forbidden Limited lists. So season 1 was 16 weeks, which was the January Forbidden Limited list, and now on April 22nd is going to be like our second episode of season 2, which is like under the start of the new Forbidden Limited list, moving so forth. So what I'm going to do today is going to be something very different from what I usually do on deck reports. Instead of reporting the deck I've been piloting, I'm going to do a little bit of brainstorming. As of right now, by the time of this recording, my main deck, the deck I've been playing this format, has been Centur-ION. I've already explained prior to why I've been playing Centur-ION this format, as opposed to something like more in tune with the meta, like for example, Snake Eye variants or branded or runic variants or stuff like that. I feel like with the new support from Legacy of Destruction, which comes in the form of these two cards right here, as well as the Synchro Monster, the deck is going to have another dimension of how it can be played. There are new cards that can be implemented into this deck. There are new strategies that you can explore, but the ceiling of the deck does not change at all. Like, the ceiling is still the same, the fundamental plays that the deck does is still the same, the win condition of the deck is still the same as well, and not many changes happen in regards to this. That being said, I kind of do need a little bit of help. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to dedicate this entire week into perfecting my Centur-ION deck, because there is a double case tourney in this next weekend, as well as a remote regional, and it's all going to be legal with Legacy of Destruction. So again, this is not a concrete deck list. This is like pretty much almost card by card the same list that you saw like on previous deck reports. What I'm going to be talking about right now is mainly like the cards that can we fit into this deck, or the approaches that we can fit into this deck. Because in testing, I have not been liking Centur-ION at all. I've struggled against Voiceless Voice. I struggled against the Fire King Snake Eye deck. I struggled like against more roguish stuff. I faced Tempai Dragons once. I faced Yubel once. I faced the Mirror once, and they were not very like enticing, even with the new support. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about all the different approaches I can take with the deck. And throughout the week, I'll probably do dueling book adventures. I'll probably do like a little bit of testing with different variants to see what can fit into this next weekend. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So, for those who don't know what these cards are, I'm going to summarize them real quick. I've already made multiple videos talking about this in my channel, and I know some people are not a fan of that. Shoutouts to Diego. Recall Centur-ION is a token generator, and it can foolish any Centur-ION card by banishing from the graveyard. Gargoyle is a new special summon extender. You can send any Centur-ION card to the graveyard to special summon it. If it's used as a synchro material, it goes back to your hand. And if it's in the spell and trap, you can special summon it and lower its level by 4. Auxilia is basically a searcher for anything in the archetype. It protects face-up spell and traps from destruction. And during the end phase, you can retrieve from banish or graveyard a Centur-ION monster to your spell and trap. Now that we got those out of the way, I guess we can talk about a few implications that these cards make possible. Gargoyle is kind of cool in this deck because we have now a main deck Centur-ION monster that we can fodder for Lubellion. Not only that, but it also opens plays into playing stuff like Heretic Seal, for example. We can play stuff like for example, other rank 8 dragon monsters. We can play, like, we can make this better with this card as well, if you choose to play like the Vision Resonator engine, and I will talk about this engine again in a moment. The fact that it can recur itself when you're synchro with it is kind of cool. The fact that it can also serve as an extender, just special summoning itself from the hand for free, well, sort of free, is also really cool. In the future, once we get Infinite Forbidden, this card is going to be better because it also can synergize with the Whitewood archetype, which is another synchro strategy that just enable a lot of pluses. So I say this card is a very good inclusion to the deck. One question that we need to ask ourselves is, will this replace MS6? Or do we play this alongside MS6? These two cards are very different on what their fundamentals are for the deck. They're both level 8 extenders. However, MS is more defensive than offensive, and the Gargoyle is more offensive than defensive. Playing both is a possibility, but the big issue with doing that is that you're going to be opening yourself to being bricking a lot more. Both Gargoyle and Wake Up Centurion are two cards that do nothing by themselves. So if you both open both of them in hand, they're just bricks. And if you play Emeth alongside these two, these are already 3 bricks in your engine, just for a play that doesn't get like super mitigated. I'm not a fan of Wake Up Centurion. I do understand how good this card can be, but I feel like this card is very much win more. The big issue that I have with this card is that you already require setup in order to activate it, which is the reason I don't like the new Emblema card. The other reason I don't like this card is the token that you spawn is not a tuner monster. So this deck already has an issue lacking tuners in the deck. So just having another card that just lacks a tuner again just makes this card even more awkward than it already is. And you cannot link away the token either. You're locked into Synchro Summons while the token is on the field. Pretty much similar to how the Sword Soul token works. Auxilia's inclusion to the deck is really good because this is a generic level 12 synchro, meaning that if you decide to play other archetypes that just bridge into the Centurion as an engine, you can do that in this deck as long as you can get to level 12. And there are plenty of ways to do that. Not just in this deck, but in other decks. The other thing that makes this card really good is the fact that there are cards that we could not play in the main deck beforehand that we can now. Like for example, Pot of Prosperity is now a better card because now you get a +1 alongside the Prosperity. Another card that we can play in this deck, and I actually been testing out, and I think has now a little bit more merit, is the Awakening, the True Awakening of Centurion. This card could always be played in the deck, but it was only searchable off Primera. And now that we have a second searcher, this card has more value in this deck because it can just be accessed at any time. And the trigger effect for this card is Auxilia's second effect. So now we have a counter trap that is searchable in the deck that actually like bolsters a lot of what the deck can do. The other thing that makes it like very strong for Auxilia is the fact that you can grab follow-up as well. You can just grab like stand-up Centurion for next turn, or if you didn't open stand-up Centurion but you got access to Auxilia, you can also do that. You can also play this card and just keep going. You can grab like for example the bonds and just use bonds. And yeah, like one other thing that makes Auxilia very powerful, and now we're going to start the discussion about other engines that you can play in this deck. Now Dimension Shifter is a more favorable card for you. And the other thing that makes Auxilia really strong is that now you can banish further bestial monsters in the first turn without worrying about losing your resources. So if you want to combo off with the bestials like during the same turn, you can absolutely do that, and the losses are going to be very minimal because whatever you end up banishing that is a Centur-ION, you can just grab it back with Auxilia. Dimension Shifter is a really powerful card. It's a card that pretty much just ends people's turns if it resolves. So just having a deck or strategy that can actually play this card properly is really welcomed. So there are many approaches you can take for Centur-ION. The most popular one, at least the one that people are talking about the most, is just playing a heavy hand trap version alongside Dimension Shifter, and just use your non-engine, try to freeze your opponent as much as you can, and then just try to get to your win condition. And with very little conflict with cards like this, you can just like win the game by minimalizing almost all of your opponent's resources in the first few turns. Centur-ION is a deck that really thrives out of the mid to late game, so the closer you get to your end game with this deck, the stronger it is, and Dimension Shifter just really helps with that. Another approach that you can take with for the deck is play a floodgate approach. Just sit on your floodgate cards, with the exception of Skill Drain, because the Skill Drain does negate Auxilia. Auxilia can protect all your face-up spell and traps, meaning that floodgates like deck lockdown, and there can be only one, are harder to get rid of, because outside of Cosmic Cyclone, there's no real way to get rid of these cards, like generically. People play Nightmare Phoenix in their deck in order to have an easy access to the extra deck as something that can get rid of floodgate cards, but with Auxilia, that is a harder task to do. There's also SP Little Knight that can also banish these cards, but those getting to SP Little Knight means that they're using a couple of resources already, so that also plays into this situation. So that's like one other approach that you can take with the deck. I've seen people playing like 20 trap builds with Super Paul in the main, and the only monsters in the main deck are just the Centur-ION monsters. So just having 7 to 8 spots just for Centurions, while having 20 plus spots for non-engine. So that's one approach. The other really strong approach that we can do in this deck is just play a very combo heavy version, then just play like a lot of strong engines. Super Heavy Samurai is a very popular one. One of the reasons the Super Heavy Samurai version works in this deck is because of Flame Banshee, which is, let's see if we can find it, this card right here. So just having access to Flame Banshee means that you have access to your Centur-ION engine by just summoning Wakaushi. The other thing that can be done is that you have other access to a tuner monster that is level 4, and since this deck already lacks tuners, just having another tuner monster that can just facilitate your other plays is also very welcomed. When you end up synchro summoning, this goes to the pendulum scale, which means you have a full pendulum summon if this engine resolves, which already like makes more value or gives more value out of this already archetype. So the Resonator engine, I already made a video on this engine. However, basically what this means for the game is that you get easy access to Synchro 8s, Synchro 10s. There is a combo with the Bestials that just makes you a linked climb, or Synchro climb rather, into Auxilla, and then you can use Auxilla to bridge into your other Centurion stuff. So that's another engine that can be played. One engine that I thought about, that I haven't spoken about in this channel, and this takes inspiration from the last YCS, because on day 2 of YCS Rally, there were a couple of people that were playing an engine like this, and it's the Visas engine with the Scareclaw cards. So this small Visas engine is really strong, because it not only does it give you access to Visa Starfrost, which is another tuner, but it also gives you like really strong potential for pushing through boards. It makes Vicious Astrolaud, which is another really strong monster for this deck. Visa Samsara is another level 4 tuner, so you have access to another tuner that's not Primera. And another really cool thing in this deck that you can do is, if you are playing Bestials in your main deck and you open with Bestials in your hand, you can summon a Bestial, summon Visa Starfrost, and with these two you synchro into Auxilla, and this already bridges into your Centurion while also having set up with your Visas cards. But yeah, one last approach, which is an approach that has already seen regional success, is the Rainbow Bridge engine. And if you decide to play an engine like the Scareclaw one, this engine also works very well, because it gives you access to another field spell. So another card that you can play alongside this, I don't have it on me, but the Black Goat Who Laughs, just for another target for this card. And this is just a really consistent one card engine. You don't care about drawing the Rainbow Bridge, because you do have ways to get rid of it, especially like with stand-up Centurion, meaning that it's not really a dead card at all by any means. This does make the deck weaker to draw when the deck was not weak to draw to begin with, but it does really raise the ceiling of this deck, and it just comes down to whether or not it's worth it to do that experiment. But yeah, the other engine I haven't spoken about and I'm not playing at the moment is the Horus engine. The reason I don't like Horus right now is because it's not that good against Snake Eye. It's not that good against Fire King. There are other strategies in the game that just take too much advantage of the Horus cards. And even though the Horus engine works super well with the Rainbow Bridge engine, so that is one option that you can think about. I still think the resource management behind the Horus cards are just a little bit too steep for Centurion at the moment. But it is an option that you can play. It is an option that I think you should consider. And yeah, I think that's it from me. Again, this is not like a real deck report. This is just like talking about different engines that you can play in your deck. Like you can fit a lot of stuff in your extra deck, a lot of Synchro 8s, a lot of Synchro 10s, a lot of Synchro 12s. I don't want to go too in depth like on this list, because I haven't had it figured out yet. So this is basically just like a science experiment for any Centurion player that is watching this channel. But yeah, I hope you found this video informative, to your liking, to your understanding. More deck reports coming soon. Keep practicing and keep dueling.